When the Nachtkrab takes the children. Long ago, in a small village in Bavaria, there lived some children who spent their days together in joy. Often they were drawn to the nearby forest, where they laughed, played, and frolicked until their faces shone with happiness. But their parents knew the dangers of the encroaching darkness, and always warned the children to return home no later than sunset. For in the village it had been told for generations that in the shadows of the night dwelled the Nachtkrab, a dreadful being who would abduct children who lingered outside after dark. Most of the children feared this warning, and when the sky began to change color, they would hurry back home. But one day, one of the children, careless and heedless, forgot the words of its parents. Still caught up in the excitement of play, the child was unwilling to return home, and so it stayed behind while its friends sought the safety of their houses. At first, only a gentle dusk spread across the forest, but soon the darkness swallowed the last rays of the sun. The child, still playing alone, suddenly realized in fright that night had already fallen. With a pounding heart, it tried to find the way home, but the familiar paths had disappeared in the blackness. The darkness made the child stumble, and soon it no longer knew where it was. In growing despair, the child began to cry out loudly for its mother and father, but no one heard, neither the parents nor anyone else. Tears streamed endlessly down its face as it began to weep. With outstretched arms it wandered, groping into the void, its voice growing hoarse as it called for help, but no one came. Then, in the midst of the darkness, a mighty shadow rose. With a thunderous beating of wings, a figure landed upon the forest floor, larger than any human, darker than the night itself. 2 eyes glowed with a sinister red, and a hideous croak echoed in the air. Before the child stood the Nachtkrab, half raven, half nightmare, its enormous beak opening menacingly. The child screamed, its voice breaking with sheer terror, its face so twisted with fear that it seemed to age years in a single breath. Frozen in horror, it could not flee, as the Nachtkrab reached for it. With merciless strength he seized the struggling child, whose cries and sobs rang out into the silent night, and thrust it into a large black sack he always carried. The sack muffled the desperate sounds, though they could still be heard as the Nachtkrab raised his mighty wings. Meanwhile, the parents had long since begun searching for their child, who had not returned home. With growing dread, they wandered the forest with a flickering lantern, whose light fought feebly against the darkness. Again and again they called their child's name, but only the noises of the forest answered them. Suddenly they saw the massive shape of the Nachtkrab above their heads. The father lifted the lantern and stared upward, and in the silence of the night they heard the muffled cries and weeping of their child coming from the monster's black sack. Then they knew, with horrifying certainty, what had happened. The mother collapsed in despair, screaming wildly and weeping bitterly. The father stood petrified, the lantern trembling in his hand, his gaze fixed and full of shock, and at the same time filled with boundless hatred for the creature in the sky. But the Nachtkrab only let out a piercing cry, a cry that silenced them, and flew on into the darkness until he vanished with his prey. The child was never seen again.